They thought it would be just another isolated group in the middle of the desert. But the Taliban has left the entire world speechless with what they're building. And look, it's not just about gigantic projects. It's about control. Control of water, energy, and trillions of dollars buried in minerals almost no one knew existed there. China is already eyeing all of this. One of these projects is so absurd that it has become the largest of its kind in all of Asia. And if you think that's big, just wait until you see how China is quietly expanding a $60 billion corridor straight to Afghanistan. Stay with us, because what they're building could change everything we know about the future. Let's start with what's happening 400 kilometers to the north. The largest artificial canal in the desert, the Kosh Tepe Canal Project. It's not just any old project. It's a 115-meter-wide water canal, larger than the famous California aqueduct. And the reason this is so huge will surprise you. The canal will divert 20% of the water from the Amu Darya River across the desert plains of northern Afghanistan. When it's finished, it will irrigate 550,000 hectares of arable land. To give you an idea, that's larger than the entire state of Delaware. This project will increase Afghanistan's farmable land by a third and could make the country completely self-sufficient in food. Right now, 6,000 workers are operating giant excavators around the clock, digging this enormous trench through some of the world's most difficult terrain. The total estimated cost of the Kosh Tepe Canal project is $684 million. The Taliban invested another $100 million in this project, showing they are serious about transforming Afghanistan's economy. But here comes the controversial part. Neighboring countries like Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan are getting nervous. They depend on the water from this same river for their cotton crops. And Afghanistan is basically saying, we're going to take our share, like it or not. The Taliban isn't just building within Afghanistan's borders. It's creating projects that give them bargaining power over neighboring countries. And water is the most powerful weapon they have. Besides the Kosh Tepe Canal, they are building several dams across the country. They recently announced new construction on the Bakhshabad Dam, even amid diplomatic disputes with Iran over water rights. The message is clear. Afghanistan controls the water sources and will build whatever it wants. These dam projects serve several purposes at once. They generate hydroelectric power, making Afghanistan less dependent on energy imports. They provide irrigation for agriculture, supporting the Taliban's goal of food self-sufficiency, and they give Afghanistan leverage with countries that depend on these same water sources downstream. The Taliban has also been surprisingly effective at cracking down on corruption in these projects. Unlike the previous US-backed government, which was notorious for siphoning off billions in aid money, the Taliban seems to be actually completing projects and using resources efficiently. According to several reports, it has drastically reduced the corruption that plagued infrastructure projects for decades. To improve the country in all aspects, the Taliban is not just focusing on electricity, canals, dams, natural gas, and waterways. It is also rebuilding the old capital to improve the population's lifestyle, creating what is now called Kabul New City. It's not just another construction project, it's a complete reimagining of Afghanistan's future. A massive urban development covering 722 square kilometers, nearly 1.5 times the size of present-day Kabul. The Taliban plans to build 250,000 residential units that could house between 1.1 and 3 million people, creating a modern center to alleviate Kabul's overcrowding crisis. Phase 1 alone is divided into 206 sections. The Golden City section will offer 42,000 housing units for 230,000 people on 372 hectares. Construction was restarted on Parcel B in August 2023, building 6,600 housing units for 40,000 residents. In late 2024, work began on Parcel 2.6 with a stunning $700 million investment to provide 52,000 units for 330,000 residents. But it's not just housing. The Taliban envisions universities, clinics, shopping centers, and green spaces, all supported by reliable infrastructure, including schools, hospitals, public services, and parks. The project will unfold over 30 years in 2 main phases, featuring commercial, agricultural, and recreational areas. If completed, this would be one of the largest planned cities in Asia, transforming Afghanistan's urban landscape forever. The Taliban understands geography better than most people realize. Afghanistan sits right in the middle of some of the world's most important trade routes, and they are building infrastructure to leverage this position. First, there's the expansion of the China-Pakistan.
I have a question for you. First, I would like to say that it is possible to follow the greatest curiosities of our world every day. But to do so, you need to be subscribed to our channel. So, are you already subscribed? If not, take the opportunity to subscribe now. Also, take the opportunity to like the video, so YouTube will recommend more videos from our channel. So leave your like right now. And now that you have done that, let's go!
In May 2025, China, Pakistan, and the Taliban signed a trilateral agreement to extend this $60 billion corridor into Afghanistan. This creates a direct link from China's Xinjiang province through Pakistan to Afghanistan, giving China access to Central Asian markets and Afghan mineral wealth. But here's where it gets really interesting: the Trans-Afghan Railway Project. This $4.8 billion, 573-kilometer railway will connect Uzbekistan to Pakistan via Afghanistan, cutting transit time from 35 days to just 4 days. Construction begins in 2025 and will require building over 300 bridges and 5 major tunnels through some of the world's most challenging terrain. Meanwhile, the Kaf-Herat Railway, connecting Afghanistan to Iran, became operational in 2023, with the first cargo shipment of 655 tons of railway equipment successfully completed. This gives Afghanistan access to Iranian ports and global shipping networks. The Taliban is basically saying, you may not recognize our government, but you can't ignore our geography. Well, geographically, no one can beat the Taliban. And maybe that's why they started the Tapi pipeline project about 20 years ago. But unfortunately, it got stuck in the planning phase. Tapi stands for Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India, and it was designed to carry 33 billion cubic meters of natural gas annually through these 4 countries. Here comes the shocking part. In September 2024, the Taliban did something nobody expected. It restarted the construction of the Afghan portion of this $10 billion pipeline project. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid announced that work had officially begun on Afghan soil after ceremonies with Turkmen officials. This pipeline will run for 1,821 kilometers, passing right through some of Afghanistan's most volatile regions. If completed, it could generate nearly $1 billion in annual revenue for Afghanistan, in addition to creating thousands of jobs. The Taliban sees this as its ticket to energy independence But what makes this really interesting is that the original Tapi project was actually negotiated with the Taliban back in 1998, before 9/11 changed everything. Now they're back in power, and they are picking up right where they left off 25 years ago. But that's not the only cross-border project they're involved in. There's another major project known as CASA 1000, which was designed to send electricity across borders and light up millions of homes. This $1.2 billion electricity transmission project was designed to bring clean hydroelectric power from Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan through Afghanistan. Think of it like this. Central Asia has massive mountains with lots of water, which means a lot of hydroelectric power. But the countries with the most electricity don't have the largest populations. Meanwhile, Pakistan and Afghanistan desperately need more power for their growing cities and industries. The CASA 1000 project would transmit 1,300 megawatts, enough power for about 1 million homes. Afghanistan would keep 300 megawatts for its own use, while 1,000 megawatts would continue south to Pakistan. Here comes the twist. The World Bank actually approved resuming this project in 2024, even without officially recognizing the Taliban government. They created a special ring-fenced arrangement where all payments remain outside of Taliban control, but construction continues. This means the Taliban gets the economic benefits of hosting this massive infrastructure project without actually controlling the flow of money. Afghanistan's location has always been its greatest asset, but now things have taken a new turn. With the Taliban back in power, they aren't just using their position on the map. They are also sitting on a hidden fortune. Trillions of dollars in untapped minerals lie buried beneath their feet. And for the first time, they are trying to turn this buried treasure into real power. We're talking about lithium for electric car batteries, copper for electronics, rare earth elements for smartphones, and much more. The Taliban knows this and is moving fast to start.
China has held mining rights here for 15 years, and in July 2024, they finally cut the ribbon to start operations for the 10th time or so. But this time it feels different because the Taliban is providing the security and stability that previous governments couldn't guarantee. The Taliban has also been aggressively taxing mining operations across the country. According to World Bank reports, they collected $1.54 billion in revenue in 2022, with a large portion coming from taxes on mining and reconstruction industries. What's really interesting is that the Taliban is using mining revenues to fund all these other infrastructure projects. They are creating a cycle where mineral wealth pays for roads and tunnels, which makes it easier to extract more minerals, which generates more revenue for more projects. Similarly, using some of these revenues, the Taliban has also rebuilt a tunnel that kills 40 people every year, the Salang Tunnel. It's not just a death trap, it's also a lifeline for Afghanistan. This tunnel sits high in the mountains, 3,350 meters above sea level, and connects the north and south of the country. Built by the Soviets in 1964, the Salang Tunnel is 2.7 kilometers long and has become known as one of the most dangerous roads in the world. Unpaved roads filled with choking dust and smoke, poisonous carbon monoxide from broken ventilation systems, and the constant threat of avalanches. The tunnel was designed for 2,000 vehicles daily, but now handles up to 9,000 during peak hours. In 1982, the deadliest road accident in history happened here, when collisions caused fires and explosions, killing up to 2,700 people. But what shocked everyone was this. In December 2023, Taliban officials announced they had completely rebuilt the tunnel. They spent $100 million of their own money, about a quarter of Afghanistan's entire annual tax revenue. Moves like this show how serious they are about building mega projects, and if these developments succeed, they could transform Afghanistan's economy and its regional influence. There's one more thing most people don't realize. The Taliban is doing all of this.
Keep the United States left in 2021, the country was frozen out of the global financial system. Billions of dollars in central bank reserves were blocked. International aid was cut off. Afghanistan was practically isolated economically. So, how on earth is the Taliban funding billion-dollar projects? The answer lies in a combination of sources that no one expected to work together. First, there's the tax collection we mentioned. The Taliban has proven to be much more efficient at collecting revenues than any previous government. They are collecting fees at border crossings, taxes on mining, tariffs on trade, and even on opium production, although they publicly claim to be fighting it. Second, there's trade with neighboring countries. Even without official recognition, China, Pakistan, Iran, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan continue to do business with Afghanistan because they have to. Geography leaves them no choice. And every transaction that crosses the Afghan border generates revenue. Third, and perhaps most importantly, there's the issue of minerals. China is particularly interested in Afghan lithium. With the global transition to electric vehicles, lithium has become the new oil. And Afghanistan has one of the world's largest untapped reserves. Estimates suggest there could be up to $1 trillion in lithium alone, not to mention copper, iron, gold, and rare earths. China doesn't much care who governs Afghanistan. It cares about access to resources, and the Taliban knows this. That's why they are fast-tracking mining deals and building the infrastructure needed to transport these minerals out of the country. The roads, railways, and tunnels aren't just for the Afghan people. They are for trucks loaded with copper and lithium heading to China. There is also the broader strategic issue. Afghanistan has always been what historians call a crossroads. Empires have tried to conquer it for thousands of years, not because the country itself was rich, but because controlling Afghanistan means controlling the trade routes between East Asia, Central Asia, the Middle East, and South Asia. And now, China's new Silk Road, officially called the Belt and Road Initiative, also needs to pass through there. China is investing trillions of dollars connecting Asia to Europe over land, and Afghanistan sits right in the middle of that path. That's why the CPEC corridor is so important. China invested $60 billion in Pakistan, building highways, railways, and ports. But the Pakistani part of the corridor ends at the Afghan border. For China to fully access Central Asia and beyond, it needs Afghanistan to work. It needs safe roads, functional tunnels, and a government that, even if not internationally recognized, can maintain enough order for trade to flow. The Taliban understands this game perfectly. They know that their greatest asset isn't military strength or international legitimacy, it's geography, and they are using it as leverage. Every infrastructure project they build increases Afghanistan's value as a transit route. Every mine they open makes the country more important to the global economy. But there are giant risks in all of this. First, there's the issue of debt. Although the Taliban isn't taking traditional loans from the IMF or World Bank, every deal with China comes with strings attached. If Afghanistan can't fulfill its side of mining or revenue-sharing agreements, China could end up controlling not just the resources, but the infrastructure as well. This has already happened in other countries that accepted massive Chinese investments. Second, there's the issue of environmental sustainability. Diverting 20% of a major river will have consequences, not just for neighboring countries, but for Afghanistan's own ecosystem. Large-scale mining, especially for lithium, requires massive amounts of water and can contaminate groundwater tables. The Taliban is focused on economic development, but it may be creating environmental disasters that will haunt the country for generations. Third, there's the internal political issue. The Taliban might be building all these things, but it still rules with an iron fist. Women are banned from working in most fields and from attending universities. And while these mega projects might create jobs and wealth, is this wealth being distributed fairly? Or is it just enriching a new Taliban elite while the majority of Afghans remain in poverty? There's also the question of how the international community will react. The United States and Europe may have left militarily, but they still have economic influence. Sanctions could be imposed. Companies could be forbidden from doing business with Afghanistan. Banks could refuse to process transactions. All of this could stifle the economic growth the Taliban is trying to create. But for now, the Taliban is moving forward. The Kosh-Tepe Canal is being dug, meter by meter. The dams are going up. The Trans-Afghan Railway is being planned. Kabul New City is starting to take shape. The Tapi pipeline might finally get off the ground, and the minerals are starting to be extracted.
If you look at what's happening objectively, it's impressive. A group that was ousted from power in 2001 spent 20 years fighting an insurgency, returned to power in 2021, and, in just a few years, is launching infrastructure projects on a scale that the previous US-backed government never managed to do. Even with billions in foreign aid, the previous government was known for corruption and incompetence. Projects were announced but never completed. Money disappeared. Nothing worked. The Taliban, for all its problems, and as brutal as its regime is actually building things. The excavators are running, the concrete is being poured, the bridges are being assembled. It might be for selfish reasons of control and power, but the projects are happening. And this raises an uncomfortable question. What if the Taliban actually succeeds in transforming Afghanistan's economy? What if, in 10 or 15 years, Afghanistan is a trade hub connecting East, Central, and South Asia? What if it's exporting billions in minerals, generating power for neighboring countries, and collecting toll fees from all the trade that passes through its territory? The world would have to deal with the Taliban in a completely different way. It would keep the regional economic player that cannot be ignored. Countries would have to decide. Do we continue to isolate Afghanistan for moral and political reasons? Or do we acknowledge the economic reality and start negotiating? China has already made that choice. It doesn't care about human rights or democratic governance. It cares about resources and trade routes, and it is investing accordingly. Pakistan, with its own economic crisis, needs Afghan trade and energy from Central Asia. Iran, isolated by Western sanctions, needs trade partners. Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan want access to Pakistani ports through Afghanistan. So, even if Western governments don't recognize the Taliban, the reality on the ground is changing. Trade doesn't wait for diplomatic recognition. Money doesn't care about ideology, and geography doesn't change. What makes all this even more surprising is the timing. The world is undergoing an energy transition. Oil and gas are still important, but lithium, cobalt, and rare earths are the future. And Afghanistan has exactly these resources at the moment when demand is exploding. It's almost as if the Taliban returned to power at just the right time to capitalize on the global shift toward electric vehicles and renewable energy. Of course, there's an irony to this. The Taliban, a group known for its religious fundamentalism and rejection of modernity, is now in the business of supplying materials for electric cars and solar panels. They are becoming an integral part of a modern global economy that, in theory, goes against everything they represent. But pragmatism beats ideology when billions of dollars are at stake. There is also the question of how long the Taliban can maintain control. Afghanistan has a long history of fragmentation. Different ethnic groups, different regions, different factions within the Taliban itself. Building infrastructure could help unite the country by creating shared economic interests. Or it could create new points of conflict as different groups fight for control of valuable resources and lucrative trade routes. The Islamic State Khorasan, a branch of ISIS, remains active in Afghanistan and carries out attacks.
If security deteriorates, all this infrastructure becomes useless. No one will invest in mining or trade if trucks are being blown up and workers are being kidnapped. The Taliban needs to prove it can provide stable, long-term security. And there's the issue of regional tensions. India and Pakistan are long-standing enemies. China and India have their own disputes. Iran and the Gulf countries face off for influence. Afghanistan is in the middle of all these rivalries. One wrong move, and it could be pulled into regional conflicts that would destroy all these development plans. But on the other hand, if the Taliban manages to navigate all these tensions, Afghanistan could become a place where regional rivals are forced to cooperate out of economic necessity. a neutral place where China and India can negotiate, where Iran and Arab countries can do business, where Russia and the West can find common ground. It's strange to think that the Taliban could become a regional peace broker, but economic interests have a way of making enemies work together. What is happening in Afghanistan now will reshape not only that country, but the entire region around it. If the projects fail, it will be another story of frustrated aspirations and missed opportunities that have haunted Afghanistan for so long. But if they succeed, we will be looking at a fundamental shift in the balance of power and economic flows in Asia. And the world is watching. Some people with hope, others with fear, many with skepticism. But everyone agrees on one thing. What the Taliban is trying to build is bold, ambitious, and completely unprecedented for a group that is still technically unrecognized by most nations. In the coming years, we will see if the Taliban can truly turn vision into reality. If they can build not only physical structures, but also a functional economy and lasting regional connections. If they can prove that Afghanistan can be more than a...
Now, I'm leaving the next step of your journey up to you. On your screen, you'll see 2 of our best videos. Choose your curiosity and click on the one that calls to you now. Well, that's it, and until next time, Curious One.